I honestly didn't think I could get more grossed out than when I went and seen The Mummy earlier in the year, but Evil Dead Burn kind of takes the cake on gore and disgusting feelings. What's going on, guys? I am Ant, your casual movie reviewer, your average fan. I go into movies with an open mind and a good feeling about all movies that I go and see, and I come back and give you my average movie review. And today we're talking about Evil Dead Burn, the newest Evil Dead movie in the franchise, and honestly, spoiler alert, one of my favorite in the franchise, if not my favorite. It did everything very, very well in this film. So my expectations going in were actually pretty high to mid-range, actually. And the reason I say that is because going in, I did have high expectations, but I also tried to keep them timid and mid because they were showing a lot of scenes in trailers and things like that. And honestly, to a point, I thought we've seen most of this movie in trailers and scenes and stuff like that, and I was dead wrong. So this movie really took my mid or my high expectations and kind of met those. Like, the mid, it did exceed those mid expectations, but those high expectations, it did really meet those expectations. And I'm glad, because I was a little nervous that we did see most of this movie in trailers, and I was dead wrong when I thought that. If you don't know what Evil Dead Burn is about, it is about Alice, who loses her husband in a car accident, and now she has to deal with his incredibly judgmental family during the funeral and memorial process, and they're all in this one house when things go awry, when somebody reads from the Book of the Dead. We know that story when it comes to Evil Dead movies. So who is this movie for? This is for the Evil Dead fans. It is very Evil Dead-esque throughout this entire movie, but it's also for horror fans and gory horror fans. It does a lot of those elements well. And honestly, for Evil Dead fans, it doesn't have a lot of Evil Dead to it. And not a lot of the Evil Dead movies do. Like, they are just like one little aspect of Evil Dead lore, and then most of the movie is just gore, or horror. And this movie is much like that. But if you didn't see Evil Dead Rise, I do honestly recommend you watching that first before coming into this, because there are little bits and pieces from that film that are in this as well. But yeah, guys, it is for the Evil Dead fans, the horror fans, the gore fans, for sure. So let's talk about some pros in this film. Obviously, the gore and the practical effects in this film really give this film character and depth when it comes to the horror and gore elements. Like, there are a lot of disgusting scenes. Like, I don't really get too sick when it comes to gore and horror movies, but this film really got me there. I was not feeling well at some of these scenes. Like, I honestly felt sick with some of these scenes, and I think that's a good thing when it comes to gory horror films. And the practical effects and the way the gore looks great. And even some of like the just like breakable things in this film are incredible. So that is done really well. And honestly, the story in this film is actually pretty much like an actual story in this film compared to some Evil Dead films where it's just like just nonstop violence and gore. This actually has kind of a congruent story, a physical story that gets you interested in at least one of these characters, because the rest of these characters, I could care less if they lived or died. And that's not because they have a story to them or don't have a story to them. It's because these characters suck ass. But let's talk about some cons. The only con I can think of is that this film does do something that most Evil Dead films do, but it doesn't do it as bad as some of the other Evil Dead films. And that's just, it runs long. This does feel like a long 2-hour film, and it does get to a point where you're like, okay, we're kind of like re-killing these characters over and over and over again. But when you're doing that in this film, there is like a lot of story to be learned still when we do that. And I think that is a good thing that this film does, but also kind of a bad thing because it is running a bit long at times. So did the cast have fun? I honestly do think the cast had fun. Like, as much as disgusting this film was, or like as much like, you know, like kind of hatred between these characters, like as the characters had, you can tell kind of like they just had a kind of fun time with this. Like, you can kind of tell, like, if you watch enough movies, you can see the fun that these actors are having, you know, translate onto the screen. And I think this movie does do that well. God, it is hot in here. I don't know if you guys can see the sweat on my body, but it is hot. Let's keep going. We're almost done here. My gosh, it's hot in this room. So let's talk about the standout moment of the film. If you guys don't know what this is, that is the standout moment of the film that brings this film to a way crazier place than we were before. And it just brings it to like a intense spot that progresses the story in a way crazier way. And it's going to be a bit of a spoiler, so if you haven't seen this movie, I suggest you dip out now because I am going to be talking spoilers. All right, that's enough for the people who haven't seen this movie. The standout moment of this film is when they're all at the dinner table arguing, and obviously, I forget the father's name, but the father of Will and the other son is at the table, and he's obviously infected with the like evil deadness of it. Like he has a demon inside of him. And, you know, he's getting irritated. You can see him just like itching and coughing and just being like demon-y. And the dog is like trying to get his attention, or I don't know if the dog was like sensing something, but then he just grabs a corkscrew, I think is what it was, and just like kills the dog. And the movie from there goes crazy. It goes absolutely insane from there. And this was the scene that like audibly the entire theater gasped. And I think that is why it is a standout moment, because it really got the entire theater like shocked and surprised and disgusted, but then also brought this movie to a place where we were expecting a lot worse and we got a lot worse. So let's talk about Ant's 3 big questions. Would I watch it again? Would I recommend it? And is it going to be better in streaming or in theaters? Would I watch it again? I absolutely would watch this again. Obviously, like I said, this is probably the best Evil Dead we've had in a long, long time. It is a great movie. It is gory. It is like, it's not really all that scary, but like the gore gives it that like disgusting horror feel to it. And I think like the story, just having a good steady story brings this to a good spot that like you can enjoy this film compared to other Evil Dead films where it is just a lot of evil deadness and it's just like drawn out and long. This one actually has like some fun to be had in it, and it brings a lot of like interesting elements, and like I said, that story really adds to the depth of this film. Now, would I recommend it? If you like the Evil Dead films, I absolutely do recommend it. Now, if you don't like gore though, I would not recommend it. I would not. This is a very, very, very gory, disgusting film. So if you don't like that stuff, but if you like gore, if you like horror, and you like Evil Dead, this is a movie I definitely recommend. And honestly, I might recommend this to a couple of my family or friends that do enjoy horror movies and do like that stuff, but not over the top stuff. But this might be a movie for them. Now, is this going to be better in streaming or in theaters? I definitely think this is a film you should go check out in theaters. I feel like the Evil Dead franchise is getting a lot more love in recent days, and people are going back and watching those old movies. But if we stop watching them in theaters now, we're not going to get more Evil Dead movies, and I think this one is a fantastic one to go see in the theaters, and just the audience experience with some of these grotesque and shocking scenes really add to the experience when you go and see it in the theaters. With all that being said, I gave this a 4 stars out of 5 for that great story that we had, the great practical effects, and the great gore in it, but it lost a star for some of the drawn out scenes that we really didn't need dragged out as much, and some of the honestly just like annoying characters in this film that, to be fair, you are glad that die when it comes to them dying. Thank you guys so much for stopping by for another movie review. I know this was a bit of a quick one. I am trying to get through it because I am like audibly, like I am visually dripping sweat now and I gotta get out of this room. But Evil Dead, great film. You guys should definitely check it out. And I will see you guys in the next movie review. I don't know what it is yet. I'm not gonna lie. I have no idea what's coming up or what's coming out. But I do have some other things on the channel coming up. So I hope you guys are excited. And I'm gonna try to get at least one horror gaming video up a week. So be on the lookout for that. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.